Welcome to Broadcast Astrology, Insight for Humans.
This is Lisa Pesnichak.
And I'm Sara Beckner, and we're here to deep dive into the fascinating world of astrology.
We offer blind chart readings, interviews with notable guests, and much more.
So keep listening as we bring you Insight for Humans. Welcome to Broadcast Astrology. Today we are joined by professional astrologer Leslie from Chicago. I'm so excited to have you here today, Leslie, because we're going to be talking about micro transits. So those short-term transits that don't last quite as long, that are coming from the faster moving planets like Mercury, Venus, Mars, and lunar aspects, which are relatively short-lived. And this is an area, especially when I started studying astrology, it just overwhelmed me. And then I have a natal Mercury-Jupiter aspect in my chart that I think is always forcing me into the big picture, into more global perspective. And I'm always looking at those longer revolutions that say something about how we're navigating our human life in big ways. Like, what are we doing as souls in human bodies? So I'm always looking at those large cycles. And then I started following you have a beautiful Instagram account at Archive Astrology. And you look at these shorter aspects, I think, that say something about the microcosm of our lives, that help us navigate mood, energy, productivity, work life, just sort of the things we're dealing with on the day in and day out. And when I started following you, I mean, first of all, you articulate them all so beautifully, but it speaks to me, Leslie. It has spoken to me from the beginning. And so now I tune in every Monday because I'm surprised at how much it does all the things that astrology does best. It's very validating. It just helps prepare and ground me and feel like I know what's coming. And I think here we are today, even. I think right now we're in a Cancer moon that's conjunct Mercury. And we're a few women and friends talking about these daily rhythms, which are really so well reflected by the moon. So let's dive in. I'd love you to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about your professional life, your practice, how you work as an astrologer. And then we can dive into the goods of what these transits look like, how this practice has grown in you, how it might be beneficial for other people, how, people can use this as a tool. So
Yeah.
tell us about yourself, Leslie.
Yes. So thank you for that introduction already. And I'm happy to be here as well. So, yes, I am a professional astrologer in Chicago. I meet one on one with clients. A lot of those interactions are in person. So, I do offer that, not just strictly online with clients. If you're in the Chicagoland area, I love to meet in person. There's something a little different about that. But, like you mentioned, I also have my Instagram page that it's interesting how it's grown and evolved because it initially started out, the handle was Les Learns Astrology. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a great place where I can post what I'm learning about astrology and people can share with me what they're learning and what they know. And then as I started schooling in astrology, started taking it more seriously, and it became more than just a little hobby or passion, it evolved into archive astrology. And before I started only posting about, I would consider them major transits, full moon, new moon, eclipses, maybe major transits. I remember posting about Saturn moving into Pisces. And then it evolved into daily transits. And that has been, I was thinking last night how long that's been. I feel like it's been about 3 years, which is wild. Um, Yes, and it's it's just grown, and maybe it's my Mercury conjunct Pluto in my chart that it initially was just planet to planet combinations. What's Venus Jupiter, what's Venus Saturn together. And then I just felt like there's more. There's more here. And I've slowly started peeling back the onion. And now I've created like a little rubric that I go by to help me unravel the messages that are coming through daily. And yeah, I've just learned that, yeah, major transits are pivotal, new moon, full moon, eclipses. But man, we're getting signals and messages every day. We're in communication. There are messages coming through. And it's interesting how some of the messages are recycled. And I'm interested why that is. Maybe it's because we as humans just need to be reminded. Yeah, it's been life changing. Now it's so much more than just something that I do. It's something that I'm in, I practice, I regard every day.
So tell us a little bit about the structure, the bones of that. What does it look like? What kind of time do you dedicate to this practice?
Yeah. Right. It's a lot. I just want to say, and I'm sure that it's a lot. It's a lot. I have such respect now for people that post a lot on social media because I still have what I call a munkle job. This is not my full-time job. So I knew going in a few years ago that I was going to have to dig my heels in. This was going to be a commitment. And I didn't realize I would go this long with it. And I'm glad that I have. Initially, it started out as, I was in astrological courses and I remember only thinking and associating messages with Mercury, really. And then learning more about astrology, you realize how much the moon is a messenger. And yeah, so I committed to doing that every day. And it initially started out with the planet to planet combination. We were in classes. Our teacher was, because we share a mutual teacher, and our teacher was talking about the planet to planet combination and giving us some tips and tricks how to incorporate and practice seeing those in daily life every day. And I was doing that, but then I thought, I really want to learn these combinations. What can I do to learn these combinations for myself, some self study? So I thought, if I just, maybe if I look at the transits every day and I post about them. And that's how that started off. It was just the planet to planet combination. So just like Venus, Saturn, rejection and love. And then it slowly evolved into looking and considering the zodiacal signs that the planets are in. And then it evolved into dispositor, if there's a conjunction and or if there's a new or full moon, looking at the dispositor. And then I went down the rabbit hole and I incorporate something called the degree theory, which was founded by Nikola Stojanovic. He has passed away, I think, in 2021. He's a Serbian astrologer. And back in the mid 90s, he developed a theory where each degree in a zodiacal sign resonates with a zodiacal sign. So it goes 1 through 12. So one degree is associated, has the essence of Aries. 2 degree has the essence of Taurus, and so on and so forth. So I've started incorporating that. I'll also sometimes look at the Sabian symbols, which were intuitive, clairvoyant insights that came from, well, Elsie Wheeler, but in collaboration with Mark Edmund Jones back in the 1920s. And sometimes the last layer I'll look at, depending on when a transit is the quarter phase of the moon. So the second and fourth quarter. Second is a week after the new moon, which it's like, hey, what did you manifest on the new moon? How are you digging your heels in? And then the fourth quarter is a week after the full moon, where you're having this reflection period of what did I release? How am I feeling right now? So those are kind of what I take into consideration. And I even came up with my own little rubric because, like you, Sarah, I was looking at transit and my mind was going all over the place. And I was like, I need to tighten this up. So I created a rubric. I call it the who, what, when, where, and why to make it easy for myself.
Love it. I love how you focus on the moon. I feel like in my personal astrological practice, I don't usually pay attention to where the moon is all the time, right? If I'm doing a horary chart or something like that, of course, the moon is always really important. But I think that your work is a reminder of the moon being something that's really more accessible to us as humans on Earth. It's the closest planet. It's actually a luminary, right? But it's the closest to us as far as proximity to Earth. And there's so much that so many patterns, accessible patterns that the moon weaves into our lives that we're able to understand, right? Like the Saturn Neptune cycle feels a little bit abstract to us. It's definitely important historically in looking at these big cycles, but the moon is something that we can actually move with in a really meaningful way, in a way that's tangible, in a way that makes sense to us in this body, in this time. And we can see the moon really clearly. We can see as it's waxing and waning. We can see as it joins up, as it has recently, close to like Jupiter and Venus, who are quite close, still quite close in the sky. And it's a really beautiful reminder of that we're all part of cycles and that we're all waxing and waning in our own lives. And I love waking up every morning and probably wrong to look at my phone, but it's kind of how I wake up. But I always love seeing your posts come up because I'm like, I have no idea what's going on except for the bigger transits that are happening. So it's nice to get a feel for what the day's potentially going to feel like. I love that you provide that. I would feel lost during the day if I didn't have your guidance. So thank you for doing that, for taking the time and effort to share these patterns with us. I was just wondering as you were speaking, and I love how you bring in the Sabian symbols, and I had never heard of this degree philosophy. That's really interesting. And so I'm going to look for that now, where you're pulling that in with your post just to get an idea of what you're looking at there. But I was wondering, how do you find this to be a tool for you as you navigate through your days? Is this a personal guidance besides just learning astrology more deeply, which I think I resonate with that too, because that was why I initially started doing my Instagram stuff was as a practice for myself. But do you find that the information that you're getting from the moon, that you're gaining from each day, do you integrate that into your life? And I just be curious, how has that changed your life and your orientation?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you tuning in to the daily insight. So, yeah, going back to what Sarah asked about how I incorporate it, it's every day. Sunday, I will usually look at Sunday's kind of my prep and work day. I will sit, I will look. Sunday's supposed to be a day of rest, but I think because I was born on Sunday, I'm like, hey, I gotta work. I will look at the transits for the week. And it's interesting how, for me, I feel that there is this story being told. There's
Mm,
story being told. So when we're only looking at the bigger transits, right? Venus opposing Pluto or new or full moon, I feel it's comparable to taking a verse without the context. Because you want to say, well, what came before that? What's coming after? There's a message, there's a story here. So, yes, I'm in this every day. How has it changed? Going back to the messenger, the moon being this messenger in the Chaldean order, it's almost like the receiver bringing down all this energy and these messages from these other planets for us. And other astrologers have spoken about how the moon is the first archetype that we actually come into contact when we incarnate in the
mm.
womb.
Yeah.
And it's exalted in Taurus, which is a very earthy sign. So it being the closest celestial body to us and all those other factors, it's very much close to us. And I feel like these daily messages are almost comparable to your parent leaving you a little note in a lunchbox like, hey, mind your words. Hey, don't forget that you're awesome. Be kind to others. It seems
So
like that.
very Cancerian of you.
So I'm a Cancer rising. So
Yeah.
I feel very, and two, if you look at whole sign, if you do a whole sign, my moon is in the third house. And that's another thing about the moon, her house of joy is at the third house, which is a house of traveling. So she travels through signs 2.5 days approximately. And it's a house of receiving, it's a house of communication.
Mhm.
So we cannot overlook the moon. And I think we're starting to come around when you ask people about astrology, if they know anything. A lot of people know their big three now. So the moon's coming
True.
around. But yeah, how has it changed my life? I mean, I am in it every day. And I had somebody, a friend of mine recently say to me, she said, I love your posts, but they don't always resonate with me. And I said, and at first I said, well, yeah, they are general. And you do have to consider your natal chart. what's going on there, if it's going to be directly impacting you. But I just could not get off of that comment because I was like, oh, it doesn't impact, maybe it doesn't impact people daily. But then I realized that my Mercury Pluto going on a psychological level here is us looking at things like that and saying, well, it's not about me. I shouldn't care about it, is part of the ego. Instead
Mm.
of looking at it and saying, wow, this is in the air today. Maybe it's not impacting me directly, but this is going to impact possibly somebody that I come into contact with. And maybe that can help me show more grace, more sympathy, more empathy, and be kinder and more understanding and realize, hey, maybe it's not all about me. So I think, regardless of if it hits you directly, if it really directly impacts you or not, there is something to be received. There's something to gain from it. And that's how it's helped me. It's helped me, just astrology in general, but also, in addition, these daily transits, these micro transits have not only just helped me understand my soul and psyche and personal experience more, but it's helped me just be a better person to other people and more, like I said, sympathetic, empathetic, understanding of, yeah, what's going on around us. And I think going back to psychological things, if we're here to learn and evolve and to become enlightened, part of that is realizing, stripping the ego, and it's not all about me. And there are these messages that are trying to help me evolve and taking that all into consideration.
Mm.
Also, I love that. Also, as you were talking about this person, it made me think too about just the culture we live in. It's changing a bit, but we have separated everything, you know? We have separated mind and body. I know people who don't pay attention to the weather. They don't pay attention to their nourishment and how it affects them. In some ways, we haven't been brought up in a culture that teaches us to look at things more holistically and integrated. And also, I think there's a piece of astrology that, if it's used correctly, is really living into the questions. You know, Michael Bryan is a mentor to all of us, and he talks about in horary astrology the importance of a question. But something has happened in terms of my practice where when I'm preparing notes for a reading, often what comes to me is questions. These
Hmm.
symbols evoke questions, and those questions end up being part of how we enter into relationship with our environment, the people around us, with ourselves. It's how we get into the meaning making of our lives. And so it's very easy to wipe your hands and be like, nope, that's not me. But at the same time, why? It could be a question. Oh, we have Moon Neptune in the sky today. What kind of magic is available to me? What kind of symbols can I open myself up to? Where might I feel that I'm porous or I'm being impacted by my environment or the people around me? Did I have a dream last night? Should I pay attention to it? It can be a way of just opening up these questions. And I think about, I was exposed to astrology pretty young, but I have to say, sometimes I reflect on those readings that I got in my 20s, which was mostly at the hands of my mom buying me a reading for my birthday or something. And I wasn't engaged with the material to the depth that I am now as somebody in midlife because I couldn't reflect that
Hmm.
deeply. Yeah, and maybe it is part of being young. I do think there's the first half of our life that is really cultivating the ego to stabilize and sustain us and build mechanisms for protection as earth beings. We need the ego just to function in life and stay safe. And then eventually, when we feel safe enough, we can start to transcend into those spiritual realms and understand things in a different way. So, yeah.
No, I love that. I even have one person that follows me. She shares my posts regularly on her stories, but she says, hey, everybody, to her followers. She says, these are some journal prompts for today.
Mhm.
That's great. Yeah, I just recently listened to an interview with a professional astrologer, Wade Caves. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but it was a really great conversation on a non-astrological podcast, and he was explaining astrology to this person. And I loved how he described it. And I think it really fits into this conversation that we're having, in that, as far as astrology is a form of divination, right? It's a form of reading nature with the understanding that everything is connected and that everything has meaning. And he brought in reading tea leaves, or the leaves falling. People used to watch the patterns of the leaves, the shadows, and that sort of thing. They would find meaning in the wind and the birds flying by in order to gain insight into their lives. And like you were saying, Sarah, and I think you as well, Leslie, is that this disconnect that we have as far as the natural world that we live in. And we like to call these things, I think the church has done this, and just modern society in some ways, even science to some degree, separating, calling our connection to nature as being woo and something that doesn't hold any meaning. And I think that the kind of work that you're bringing forward, Leslie, ignites some of this reading the leaves, right? Reading the micro movements and understanding that there's meaning to all of it, and that it's all connected, and that there's really this almost fossil connection between everything in the universe, where one thing tugs a little bit and it affects everything, maybe in an imperceptive way, a way that we can't understand, or maybe we won't ever really understand. But there is this integrated connection to all of it. A bird flies by and you're like, oh, a bird just flew by. But there's probably something in that, that if we were more connected and paying more attention and less in our logical brain and more in our magical nature intertwined being, then we might have more of an understanding what those things might be pointing towards.
Yeah.
Have either
I
of
love
you
that.
have either
Yeah.
of you read The Goddess Alphabet,
No.
the book? It's this book, this woman talks about how that really shifted historically when language became written, when we went from
Mm.
oral, because prior to that, everything was a form of communication. You know, you'd see, yeah, the spider dangling. The Hopi woman would come out in the morning and see the spider and be like, oh, and it would tell her something about the weather, the day ahead. And when language came, when print and the written language came, that is a form of magic of its own. We can go
Yeah.
back in time, we can see what's happening on the other side of the world. And it's such a potent magic that it eclipsed all the other forms of communication, and we became heavily reliant on it. And we lost all of these other forms of communication that are quite natural to the human experience. And it's funny because when I was in dark retreat in April, I felt the same thing about vision, like vision being a greedy sense. It can eclipse all the other forms of knowing, because it's easy to just be lazily like, oh, we got to see it to believe it, got to see it. And so I think there is a resurgence right now as far as other forms of communication and opening up other forms of sense perception to allow us to be in relationship within our environment and to receive that communication and wisdom.
Yeah.
Astrology is just another potent tool. It's just another form of magic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've always considered myself, and you all probably have considered yourselves too, to be a spiritual seeker. I've been somebody who's wanted to know more about myself and my psyche. And when I found astrology, I felt like that was this huge missing puzzle piece. I felt like, wow, this has been there the whole time. I just haven't looked up. Haven't looked up. And yes, if you subscribe to everything is connected, everything is related, then I've amputated, I had amputated this huge part of myself. And I do feel that even, yes, disregarding these daily messages that are coming through, well, what does that mean if you're disregarding those? You're only taking bits and pieces of astrology out of context. I'll look at the new moon or the full moon or the eclipse and that's it. No, there's a lot more going on. There's this story being told. There are these repeated messages. And are we going to listen? Are we going to pay attention so that we can evolve, enlighten, and awake? And I do feel that we are starting to wake up with Uranus going into Gemini. We're starting to want more information. We're wanting to ask more questions. We're getting more curious. And that's one thing that excites me about these daily posts is I'm like, oh, okay, this is an opportunity for people to see these messages that are being communicated to them daily, whether or not they're directly or indirectly pertaining to them that can help them evolve. And I do think with Pluto going through Aquarius, where is this empowerment going to be? It's going to be in community, it's going to be about the other. And again, going back to not just looking at a daily post or anything and saying, well, it doesn't pertain to me, disregard that. It's about the other. Oh, okay, maybe this doesn't directly impact me, or maybe I can expand myself and journal on it. But how does this impact other people and therefore impact how I interact with them and interact with the world that day?
Yes. It also, when you talk about the spiritual seeking, I think about in all the perennial spiritual traditions, they all talk about coming back to the moment. And it's another piece as Westerners, I think we are driving forward. And so much of the astrology is driving us forward right now, too, where we think we need more information, have more. It's tomorrow, it's next week. We have not arrived. And we're just barreling down the tracks. And there is something beautiful about slowing down enough and investing enough of your time to enter into this living day, which is where we live our lives in this moment, in this day, and not missing that part of the story, not jumping to the climax or getting the dopamine from the rush of this is what it's all about. This means this, but pulling it back into this slower, softer, living present moment thing.
Yeah, I was just looking at my notes because I couldn't find them. But yes, some of these messages are on repeat. There are times when the moon is telling us during the month, slow down, engage in self care. There are some where it's like, hey, don't forget, wield your words wisely. Hey, be with family, be with people that empower you, people that transform you in a positive way. So there are all these beautiful messages that I feel we're missing out on if we're not tapping into these daily transits that are going on.
It's so funny that you guys are saying that because I think I'm really guilty of not settling in. My moon's in Capricorn, so it's like, let's work, let's do the things. And when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today, I knew we were going to talk about micro transits, and I was excited about that. But for some reason, I'm feeling so preoccupied with this Mars Uranus conjunction that's coming up next month and stuff. You know what I mean? And feeling the pull towards that. But also today, which I didn't even realize until you said so, Sarah, we have Moon, Mercury, and Jupiter all in beautiful Cancer today. And why not enjoy that before we get thrown into the chaos of what's sure to come in the next couple weeks? So thank you for pulling me back into that.
Well, Leslie's really pulling us back in because I'm trying
Yeah,
to speak
I
my own
know.
medicine because I have a cardinal moon as well that is pushing me onwards always.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I have Virgo moon, so I want to know all the details.
Ah,
Yeah, I need to know every little message. Let me know. I need to know it. Yeah.
yeah.
And again, just focusing on those major, those big things that are coming. Yeah. Like our minds can go so many different places. And yet it's being communicated to us regularly to slow down, worry and focus on this for the day, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
just to get Virgo for a minute, since you mentioned
Mhm.
it, can we go back? Because I want to know a little bit more about your rubric. Could you take
Mm.
us through? So, when you're talking about the who, what, when, where, and why, do you start by looking if there's any aspects to the moon? And then is that the who? Like today, we've got Mercury conjunct the moon. Would
Mhm.
it be like, okay, Mercury's the player? So the what is something around connecting, facilitating, communicating, moving information. And this is happening now. And like, how do you Tell us something about how you weave that story, how you find the story and how you weave it into into that larger plot.
Mm. Yeah, that's not part of the rubric per se, just the moon, but the moon is a great starting point. I'll even look at where the moon at is for that week. Like, oh, this is kind of where the energy's going. We're starting out in Cancer. We're focusing on home. And then we're going to go into Leo. We might get creative a little bit this week too. And then by the end of the week, maybe it's in Virgo. It's like, hey, we need to get organized. We need to get our stuff together. Maybe focus on our health a little bit more. Maybe work matters. So I will look at that, but I'll write down the major transits for a day and then who are the planets involved in this particular aspect? Right. So I gave the example because keeping it light and airy, the Venus Jupiter conjunction we just had, right? Who are the planets involved? Venus, Jupiter. And then I will think of the associations with each of those planets, right? What does Venus represent? What does Jupiter represent? What is the planetary combination? What are those planets together, right? Lover's bliss, excessive love, expansion and luck. And then the when is what is the angle? Is this a conjunction? Is this a sextile? Is this a square, a trine, an opposition? What is this? So, who, the planets, what, the combination, what are they together? The when, what is the aspect? Where, what zodiacal sign are these planets in? And then how does that mold them? So, Venus and Jupiter were in Cancer. So we already broke down Venus, love, beauty, art, what we desire, Jupiter, expansion, growth, luck, belief. In the sign of Cancer can be emotional expansion from the heart, faith in our intuition. And then we get to the why, which is the fifth part of the rubric, the last part of the rubric. And you can kind of go all over the place with the why. That's when I would look at the dispositor. That's when I would consider the degree theory. That's when I might look at the Sabian symbol. And lastly, if we're in any quarter phase of the moon. So, for example, the Venus Jupiter in Cancer, we talked about that. The dispositor, first, the moon was in Aries. So that was interesting because the Venus Jupiter conjunction in Cancer happened at 25 degrees. And in degree theory, 25 is associated with Aries.
Mm.
So there's something being echoed there. You will find it's fascinating when you do this stuff, you'll see the synchronicities. You'll say, oh, that's interesting. That's being repeated. And as our teacher Michael taught us, the universe is not discrete. So moon was in Aries, and then it was at an Aries degree. And you think, okay, well, what's the dispositor of Aries? Mars. Mars was in Taurus. It's debilitated. But what is Mars in Taurus? It takes its time. It's slow and steady. And for me, I just wove in this story of, okay, I see all this. This is, if we want the luck, if we want the expansion, we want to grow, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. We want it. We want it with the Aries. We want it. But what's going on with Mars? Oh my God, Mars is in Taurus. And if you go to the last dispositor, Taurus, the dispositor of Taurus is Venus, you just circle back to the Venus Jupiter conjunction. So it's this like wheel of, I get it. It's like Venus and Jupiter. You want this expansion. It's here for you. It's ready for you. But then the moon is in Aries. And it's like, oh, like you want this to happen fast, but Mars is in Taurus. It may not happen, or you need to put more work into it. It's going to take time, slow and steady. And then again, 25 degrees is in degree theory associated with Aries. So that is how these stories get woven.
Fascinating.
Yes.
That Venus Jupiter conjunction happened on my MC, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was looking forward to that, like something great's gonna happen, something epic with my career. And I bought a fish for my kid that day. That was what happened that day. And
The lines of water. No.
I know it really fits what you were seeing with all of that Aries and the Mars and Taurus, where I had to reel myself back and be like, all the things that I'm doing is all pushing towards this expansion, this opportunity, this success or
Mhm.
whatever. And it wasn't a huge gut wrenching exercise, but it was something curious of, oh, okay, it's not going to be this magic fix, which I think is something that we often get pulled into with Jupiter. And I've definitely learned over the years as far as Jupiter doesn't fix all of the things. Sometimes it just brings more of what's already happening. And so I think that's a really interesting part of Jupiter where we tend to maybe lean into it in a way where we think it's going to just wave its magic wand and all of a sudden all of the mice will be horses or something like that. And midnight strikes and they're back to mice again. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I found like Jupiter, if wherever it's at, if there's a problem there,
Yeah,
it's going to feel bigger.
totally. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I like this, Leslie. I think this is a brilliant way of teasing that out.
Yeah,
Like
it
a
really
really,
is.
we do like our rubrics. OSA
We do.
graduates like our rubric. But to have the clarity of this is what I'm really going after. These are the questions I want to have answered here. And this is how. So, how is that Jupiter going to work on the MC, that Venus Jupiter? Like, how can you explore that? How can you get to the why and flesh out that story more deeply than just looking aspects and sign? Yeah,
Yeah, and then taking it to your natal chart,
yeah.
applying it to your natal chart. Where's Taurus for you? Is this where I need to do the work? Is this where I need the patience? Yeah. So that's how, and I found when I started incorporating the zodiacal signs, when I started taking the degree theory into account, that is when I started getting more feedback on my Instagram account. That
Hmm.
resonated. I felt that. My friend felt that. And so I felt like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's brilliant.
this is clicking. There's something here. So I've stuck with it. And I'm sure there's so many more things to explore. Maybe one day I'll add in decans. But right now, this is what works. That's the rubric. Break it down. What do these planets represent? What are they together? What kind of aspect are they in? Right? That's going to say a lot. Is this a challenging or is this a flowy energy? You can even take into consideration, is this a cardinal? Again, like the Venus Jupiter, right? In a cardinal sign. This is a cardinal combination. It too wants to initiate. It's Cancer, but it still wants to initiate, just like the Aries, all this initiatory. But damn, Mars is in Taurus. And then the why. I think you could go all over the place with the why. You could look at the decans or you could look at the dispositor, the degree theory, the Sabian symbols, and you will find so many more layers. So many more
Mhm.
layers.
And when you talk about using the phases of the moon, the quarter phases of
Mhm.
the moon,
Yeah.
you're not just talking about with lunar aspects. Would you layer that in on this story? Like, okay, during this Venus Jupiter conjunction, the moon was in this phase, and
Mhm.
that's going to also color its ultimate expression. If it's the waxing, that's going to look very different than, and I don't even know what it was. Do you know?
I think
Because that might say
What?
it
something,
was
Lisa.
waning.
Yeah, I mean, so that
Okay.
waning moon, that confirms your experience, Lisa. It's Jupiter that was culminating. It was like the coming back in and
And down.
There's some inner stuff to work on in order
Yeah.
to pull this out, in
Mhm.
order to bring it to culmination, which is so beautiful. And I think that encourages us to go, like the work you're doing, I think it is encouraging people to go a little deeper into these daily meditations and really figure out what's our inner landscape and how are we going to work with that. I think knowing our chart too is really important. The problem with astrology, as our teacher Michael always says, is not that there's not enough information, is that there's too much information.
Mhm.
And I think that that's something, no matter what perspective or what approach you're taking to astrological work, is figuring out what are the important parts of the story that we're going to focus on. And the part of the work that you're doing that is challenging is that it's hitting everybody. These micro transits are hitting everybody's chart completely differently. And so they're actually going to manifest quite differently. And the truth is that probably at least half of them aren't even going to really make an impact on people's personal lives. Like you said, they're going to see it maybe in the outside world or maybe in people who they're close with. But a lot of these things aren't going to be things that are personally impacted and changing our lives. And I think that's something that I see on social media a lot that can be really misleading for people is like, this full moon is going to change your life. And this eclipse changes everything. This whatever is, we're never going to be the same. And life doesn't work like that. We live in a reality where we're in bodies, where we're confined by time and experience and slow progress. Even though we have quick bursts and that sort of thing, there's a huge overlay of mundane reality to our lives where we have to feed the kids and clean the house and go to work. And within that context, we lose that magic. And I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but it felt relevant. So
I I
I'll
think
leave
it's
it
very
there.
relevant, and I also appreciate you bringing it up because I do think a lot of what happens on the socials is just baiting. They're taking the most exciting, building up
Totally.
all of this momentum, and then that actually does a disservice to the field of astrology. Everyone's not gonna have this cataclysmic, massive, life-changing event with every single moon and every single transit.
Yeah.
But I also hearing you talk made me think just about some of the one of my side passions. I love neuroscience. I sort of geek out on neuroscience. And what you said about astrology being too much information, in a way, that's how we are biologically wired as human beings. We are getting trillions of bits of data all the time through our bodies from the environment. And the reticular activating system in the brain is what funnels that and helps us prioritize and sort data in a way that we can know how to proceed with our lives. And there's something to be said that when you explore these micro transits, you're priming the reticular activating system to tag that information. So when you see that aspect, even if it doesn't necessarily resonate with you, you're opening up your brain to receive that data. And you're probably going to be more likely to see it in the world around you, how it's showing up in the newspaper, how it's showing up for your friend, how it's showing. So
Yeah.
we are telling our brains all the time what to look for. And this is one way to prime the pump and allow some data in and allow it to be relevant in a way that I don't know. There's something about the way you're communicating about this, Leslie, that's getting me very excited actually about exploring this because astrology is a storytelling art in a lot of ways. That's why it's so closely associated with myth because we are doing the weaving, we are doing the meaning making and we are living into the stories as human beings. We are the stories in a way. And so I think you've inspired something in me that really wants to investigate this as a practice and just take it down to that third house and
Mhm.
play and start to answer some of those questions about why and see what it opens up in terms of my field of experience and the
Yeah.
living astrology that's available to us on the day in and day out.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned neuroscience because that's something that doing this daily has really woken up in me. It just made me think of, wow, there is this field, this source that sometimes we don't even see. We don't even see all the planets all the time. That is participating with us. It's in union with us. And I'm like, wow, what other fields are there? What else is going on? Right?
Mhm.
What else is out there that I don't see that is part of my reality? So it's really woken me up to just awareness, observation. So that's one of the things, yes, I hope to get across with these daily micro transits of, yes, they're fun, they're good to know. Maybe they will or will not resonate with you directly, but there's power in awareness and observation. Yeah.
I think any spiritual journey that pushes you towards greater levels of awareness and compassion is a valuable path and a meaningful path. And I think we all have to find our tools on how to get there. But I think you're getting there, Leslie, because to always bring it back to that, it's a beautiful thing. And it does open up this idea of astrology without getting dogmatic about all the things we could talk about, just as a tool for accessing spirit and the spiritual life, really being just practices and beliefs that help us connect more deeply with that fundamental truth that we are all connected, and living into the awareness of that and having that holistic frame of vision and allowing that to work in us in a way that makes us more available to love and compassion. It's a worthy endeavor.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I know I'm like anything astrological, it takes time to do this stuff, which is why I'm so grateful that you're doing it because you're sharing that gift of time and passion with the rest of us because each have our own way of expressing astrology. One thing that Wade Cave said is he described astrology as being a science of liberal arts, which I thought was really interesting in that it is, and I've always known that it was this mixture of science and art, right? Because there's the science to it, but also each of us has our own creative way of interacting with it and expressing that, which I think makes it so exciting and interesting in how everybody does. So I really appreciate the way that you express that. And also the artwork that you bring forward too is so unique. And I don't know how you find all of those images, but it must be quite a lot of time and effort for you to do the work that you do. So thank you for doing that. I really encourage everybody to follow Leslie on Archive Astrology. Is there anything else you're putting out there, Leslie, as far as the work that you're doing that you want to tell everybody about?
No, there's something I'm working on. I'm not ready to tell anybody yet, but it is obviously astrologically related and it's related to writing. So I'll just leave that there. But
Love
yeah,
it.
Something
Beautiful.
exciting in the works. I love that.
Yeah.
Well,
Very
thank you
cool.
so much for joining us today, Leslie. And we are very excited to see you at the United Astrology Conference in Chicago.
Great.
yes. Well, thank you all so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for taking the time and thanks for all the work that you do. And I have no idea what Sara and I are doing next month. We need to chat about that. We'll be surprised.
Next time.
Bye, everybody. Take care. As always, thanks for listening to Broadcast Astrology Insight for Humans. If you're so inclined, like, follow, and subscribe, and don't be a stranger.
Signing off for now. Until next time, humans, keep your gaze upwards on the stars and be well. We look forward to sharing more soon.